right, film geeks, today we're talking all about Beau is Afraid. I don't, um, let's talk about it. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of All Right, Let's Talk About It. My name is Savannah. I am your host. I do film reviews and film industry commentary. And I am going to apologize beforehand because, like I said, I do film reviews, or at least I try to do film reviews. And I don't know what to do with this one. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to think. I'm still confused. I'm still processing. It hasn't even been 12 hours since the movie ended, and I'm trying to make sense of it all. I don't get it. I'm very lost, and just okay, let's just talk about it. So Beau is Afraid is the movie that I saw last night with Joaquin Phoenix. And I need to stop listening to people on the internet because I had a lot of people saying, hey, are you going to watch this? Are you going to look at this? And I'd heard of the movie, and it was kind of on the list of things to see because there's still a lot I need to catch up from with what is the month that was last month? April, because it's May now. And, Beau is Afraid was on that list. It looked very interesting. And I like Joaquin Phoenix. I think he's incredibly gifted. I love his style. I love the way he performs, the way he projects. I think he's amazing. But, it was on a list. And so, I was like, you know what? I'm not doing anything on a Tuesday evening. Let's go see it. So I went to go see it. I had no idea what it was about. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything. I knew nothing. I remember walking into the theater to go to into my seat, realizing I don't know anything about this movie. So I looked up a brief synopsis on the app that I use, AMC app. Gosh, I'm blanking. I need to start eating breakfast before I do these things. And just to kind of get a sense of what's going on. And I think I read the first couple of sentences. I was like, okay, this is about a guy who has, he's paranoid or whatever, and kind of left it at that. I don't know. Maybe I should have done more research. Maybe I should have prepared myself more. I don't think preparing myself would have done it any justice. So this is Beau is Afraid. It stars the wonderful and ever talented Joaquin Phoenix, directed by Ari Aster, who I believe also directed Midsummer and Hereditary, two of which I have not seen. Don't come at me. I know better. I know. You don't have to tell me. I know. So don't hurt me for that. Also stars Patti LuPone, Nathan Lane, Amy Ryan, Kylie Rogers, Parker Posey, Stephen McKinley Henderson, Haley Squires, Michael Gandolfini, Zoe Lister Jones, and Richard Kind. Okay. Oh, goodness. So many things. So many thoughts. This was a hot mess, but not a bad hot mess. It was just a mess. So this is about a dude named Beau. I'm going to try to explain this the best way that I can. So this is about a dude named Beau Wasserman, portrayed by Joaquin Phoenix, and he is just mentally out there. He is dealing with anxiety, paranoia, depression. I'm not even exactly sure because this movie is told from his perspective. So we're seeing the world the way he sees it, which makes the movie that much more confusing. And I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So Beau Wasserman, we open up, he's born and then he's at his therapist's office and he's talking to his therapist about his anxieties, but he's also kind of anxious because he's visiting his mother the next day. He's supposed to take a plane out and his therapist is asking him how he feels about it. And, does he want his mother dead? Which should have kind of given a clue, given things away right there. That should have been the clue. Oh, by the way, there will be spoilers. I don't know how to talk about this without spoiling something. So, he goes to the pharmacy and he gets because his doctor's like, hey, I'm going to prescribe you this new prescription to help you out with your anxiety. And because his medication was kind of working, but it was also making his eyes itch. So he's like, I'm going to give you this new medication. And he writes the name down. And I looked the name of the medication up, hoping to maybe see what this medication is for, to get a sense of what this was about. It looks like it's a made up name, which is incredibly frustrating. So he takes his new medication and he has to take it with water. And he packs his bag, gets ready for the whole thing is I'm not even explaining this right. There's so many things that happen in between the therapist's office and him getting home, because he's walking home. He's got his prescriptions in hand. He stops and he buys this, cute little angel figurine from this little kiosk on the street. And as he's walking, there are people who are staring up at this guy who's threatening to jump from a building, and they're just, videotaping him with their camera phones or whatever, and they're kind of smiling. No one's taking it seriously. No one seems panicked. And I'm like, this guy is like about to jump from his death. Is no one bothered? But then we jump to a dead guy on the street, and I'm like, well, is this the same guy? It can't be. It looks like this guy's been dead a long time. And we go into the street, and then there's all these random people and things are happening, and at this point I don't know what's real and what's not. I don't know what's going on. I don't understand anything. Am I making any sense? I don't think I'm making any sense. So we get to Beau's house and his apartment, and he starts packing up his things. He's got everything he needs ready, and he goes to sleep, but he can't sleep because his neighbor next to him keeps slipping letters and notes under his door telling him to turn the music down, but he doesn't have any music up. And this just keeps happening. He keeps waking up, and then he wakes up, and it's like 3 something in the afternoon, and his flight is supposed to leave in like 2 hours. So he hurries up, gets his stuff together, goes out the door, and he puts his bag in the hallway. He has his key in the door, and then he runs back into the apartment because he realizes he left his floss, and when he comes back, his keys are not there, and the handyman is just not helpful, completely ignores him, and that's when things get weird. I mean, things were already weird before, but then it gets really weird. So he's trying to get a locksmith. He calls his mom to say, hey, I don't know when I'm going to get there. I lost my keys. She's not listening. She just seems like she's not that sympathetic of a human being at all. She's very self-centered. That's the kind of vibe I get from her. And then, things just get weird. And then he takes his medication, and he realizes he doesn't have any water, and the water is turned off in the building. And that's when, this thing was so weird. Okay. So, and then he takes his medication. He runs across the street to get a bottle of water, but he leaves a phone book in the door to keep it ajar so he can get back in because he doesn't have his key to get into the building. But as he's, trying to pay for this bottle of water, his credit card is declined, so he's fishing out cash and change. And as he does it, these people from the street, I don't even know if they're real, if they're a hallucination. We don't know. We don't know. That's the thing. And I'm not explaining any of this right. I hope you're still here. Please still be here. And they're walking into the building. They're going into the elevator, and of course they go straight to his apartment, but they pull the book from the door, leaving him out in the cold where he has to sleep on this thing. And then he sees them in his apartment where they're trashing the place, and there's this weird guy with tattoos, but he manages to get back into the building because the glass is broken. So, and as he's going to his apartment, the guy with the tattoos is on the floor kind of hanging outside the doorway. He's dead, and he's kind of devastated. He doesn't know what's going on, so he calls his mom to see what happens. Calls his mom, and this guy from UPS picks up. I feel like I'm describing a dream. I have very vivid dreams, like incredibly vivid, Alice in Wonderland type of color kind of dreams where I can recall details, full details. Like I can give you a play by play. I can write a novel on what goes on in my sleep. That's what I feel like I'm describing. That's what it sounds like. I feel like I'm describing a dream, because what else would this be other than this guy? He couldn't get to his apartment, but the next day he wakes up and he goes in because somebody broke the glass, and he goes in, and then he goes into his apartment, but there's a dead guy hanging outside the door. So he calls his mom, and the UPS guy picks up, and the UPS guy tells him that he just came there to arrive to drop off a package, and he only stepped in the house because there was a smell and the dog was going nuts. And turns out his mom died because a chandelier fell on her face, and he just stands there forever, not remembering that, hey, he actually turned the water on so he could take a bath, because lo and behold, by the time he gets back, the water's turned back on, and he forgot about the water. So the apartment is starting to flood. And now I'm getting anxious because he dropped his phone to the floor. So we're watching the water slowly leak from the bathroom to his feet near his phone. And this anxious feeling that I got, wondering, pick up your phone, pick up your phone, pick up your phone. This movie was so interactive. It was very interactive. Audience participation is really required. So he goes into the bathtub. He's taking a bath. He's holding on to his little angel figurine. He's got his phone in the other hand. He's devastated. His mom is dead. And the last conversation he had with her was not a good one. But as he's laying there in the bathtub, he looks up, and there's a guy hanging on the wall. He's trying not to fall, because you know how, have you ever seen a child walk up a door frame? and use their feet and their hands to grip. That's what was happening. So on the ceiling above the bathtub was a man gripping the walls of the ceiling to keep from falling. But then he falls, and they're wrestling and tangling in the bathroom, and it gets really weird. So Joaquin Phoenix is terrified, so he runs out the bathroom bare butt naked into the street, screaming and hollering, goes to police officer asking for help. And the police officer is like, freeze, freeze, drop the weapon. So he drops the weapon, and the weapon is, the angel figurine, and it breaks. And it's sad because he was going to get that and give it to his mom. And he's like, don't make me shoot. And he's like, freeze, don't make me do this. Like, the police officer looks like he's about to cry. This is something out of a dream, y'all. I'm telling you. And he's like, don't do it, don't do it, don't make me do it. So Joaquin Phoenix runs away, and as he's running away, he gets hit by a truck, and then he wakes up in this teenage girl's room, and this teenage girl, as we can tell looking at her room, is obsessed with K-pop. And then it gets weird. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's not even the whole movie. I think that might have been an hour into the movie, if that. This movie is about 3 hours long, so it's a long one, and it doesn't make any sense. This is the textbook definition of an unreliable narrator, if I've ever seen one. An unreliable narrator, for those of you who've never heard that term, is what it sounds like. It's a narrator that's unreliable because for one reason or another, their credibility is compromised. They can't be trusted. Maybe they're a pathological liar, or in our case with Beau Wasserman, he is mentally ill. So we're seeing the world the way he sees it, through his lens of anxiety and paranoia. Or think of the movie Room with Brie Larson, for which she won an Oscar. That movie is actually told from the perspective of her son. So we're getting everything through his eyes. And because he's so young and immature and he really doesn't understand what's going on, he's an unreliable narrator. Everything is through the lens of a 5-year-old, 7-year-old kid. Now, that's this movie. I've never seen anything like it. I've seen movies about people with mental illness. So, I think Black Swan with Natalie Portman, because there are different moments in that movie where we're seeing things through her lens, and then we later find out that those things never actually happened, right? So we get that moment of clarity where we're kind of with her. We realize, okay, she's losing it a little bit. She needs help. We never have that. There's never this moment where things kind of pick back up into reality and tells us that what just happened didn't actually happen. No, the entire movie from beginning to end is his perspective. So this is how he experiences the world. So these people who are with him, we never really know if they're actually there. These places where he's at, we never know if he's actually there, if these are real places, real people. It's even the people that he meets who are relatively normal. So when he wakes up in the K-pop bedroom, he's actually in a house with Nathan Lane and Amy Ryan. They're a couple. She works in business or finance or stockbroking or something or other. He is a surgeon, and she's the one that hit him with the car. And they didn't take him to the hospital. They took him back to their house, and they put him in their daughter's room because the only other room available was their son's room. Their son died in action, was a war hero, but they're also housing his, war buddy, who is just PTSD to the extreme. But probably not even that much extreme, because again, remember, y'all, everything is through his perspective, and everything is just slightly exaggerated. So the way these people are acting is just not normal. It's really just, it's almost like his hallucinations are gaslighting him. And we're being gaslit because we're experiencing this with him. And there's this constant sense of anxiety and confusion that you, as the viewer, feels because you're waiting. You're waiting to snap back into reality. You're waiting for someone to tell you that none of it's real, that you're hallucinating, and that you're going to be okay. But that never happens in this movie. I don't know how to stress that enough. This movie is told through the perspective of someone who has anxiety and some kind of paranoid border personality, maybe schizophrenia, something like that kind of disorder. So if you've ever met someone who is schizophrenic or someone who suffers from some sort of paranoia like that, and they've ever talked to you about the things that they experience. Now imagine experiencing that for 3 hours in a movie. That's it. That's this movie. It's insane, and it's bonkers, and all of a sudden people are dead, and then they're not dead, and then he is living with this thing that his mother told him, because we're getting flashbacks from his childhood, but even his flashbacks are unreliable. because we thought, oh, he met this girl named Elaine and they promised to stay virgins for one another. But then she gets taken away in the weirdest way. But then we meet up with her again later and she's this grown woman. And it's just weird. It's like, okay, well, what actually happened? But apparently there was a promise that was made. But what did, and then, but he's like, well, I'm a virgin. I can't have sex because I will die. Well, his mother told him for the longest time that his father died having sex with her. Not like, Rose Nyland, where, I guess it kind of is like that. If you ever watched The Golden Girls, her husband Charlie died on top of her while they were having sex. He had a heart attack. Well, his father apparently um, died because he orgasmed inside his mother. That's the moment he was conceived. He had a heart murmur. And apparently, when he decided to, seal the deal, it caused issues. He had a heart attack and died. And this condition apparently was passed down to the son because she's like, your dad died that way, your grandfather died that way, your great grandfather died that way. So he's always had this fear that if he, seals a deal with a woman, he's going to die. That's it. So he's dealing with that, a mother who's not that supportive, who seems to be a bit self-centered, possibly narcissistic in some way. And then just all the other we I don't know. I don't even know if I'm making sense. The movie didn't make any sense. How am I supposed to make any sense? So is this movie any good? I don't know. I know I didn't dislike it. I didn't dislike it. I'm just not sure yet if I liked it. Ask me in a couple of days. Here is my solemn promise. I'm going to make a note and put it somewhere to come back to this movie in a couple of months. I'm going to rewatch it, when I'm less confused, when I have a more, once I, maybe there are things in this that I may have missed because I was so dang confused, and to come back to it later because I don't know if I like this or not. I know I didn't dislike it. I know I didn't hate it. I can't, other than it being too long. I thought it was way too long. And it being very confusing. The narrative structure was just all over the place and very weird, but understandably so, because again, this story is being told through the lens of someone who suffers from mental illnesses that give him anxiety and hallucinations. So the narrative structure is just all over the place. Think, Alice in Wonderland, the Disney version, where things are just kind of hopping from one thing to another and nothing is connecting and nothing makes sense. That's what's happening here. It's very, very strange, but there's something good about it as well. Joaquin Phoenix is wonderful. He commits, he sells it. Like I'd buy it if I wasn't so dang broke all the time. Like it's such a good performance. I expect nothing less from him. Something even as wild as this, he managed to make it personal and make it real. I mean, you have to because again, this story is told through his perspective, and if he doesn't sell it in a way that I can believe it, it fails. And he succeeded because I was hella confused, and I was with him every step of the way. There are moments of his own anxiety that I was feeling like there's something very interactive and almost genius and brilliant about the way he played this role. He had to play it to perfection. Kind of reminds me of Tar, not in that the performances are similar, but that the entire movie, the entire experience hinged on Cate Blanchett's performance. If she didn't succeed, everything failed because the entirety of Tar is her performance and also the performance of the supporting cast because we're learning a lot about Lydia Tarr through that supporting cast, right? They have to be perfect, but she has to be perfect because she is the movie. The same thing here. He is the movie. Everything is through his eyes, through his lens. He is telling the story. And if he doesn't play the part well, everything fails. I think he sold it. I think he did a great job. There is a lot technically to be said about this movie that's amazing. It's artistically wonderful, very, nonsensical, not quite art house. When I think art house from this year, I think of Infinity Pool. But this is the type of thing that I probably would have watched in like college to give me an example of expressionism. It's not quite German expressionism, it's not quite French expressionism, but there's some kind of in between here between the French and the German expressionism that I think this film embodies and very avant-garde. So there's an artistic quality to this that's very beautiful. So this movie has to be visually stimulating and visually striking, and Joaquin Phoenix has to be perfect. I think all of those things were done very well. I'm just not sure how I feel about it. Does any of that make sense? Probably not. But if you're still here, God bless you. Now, in terms of what any of this meant, symbolism, what the director was trying to say, I can't give you any of that right now. Again, I'll probably have to come back to this in a couple of months to give you a more proper analysis of what was happening. It was that confusing. I was that bewildered. But I can tell you what I got out of it. And I thought this was such a sad and very beautiful and I don't know, there's almost heartwarming. I don't think heartwarming might be the proper phrase, but there was just something very beautiful and honest about this portrayal, this presentation of mental illness. You know, we do see a lot of movies of people who are struggling with some kind of mental illness, whether it's depression, alcoholism, schizophrenia, like in Black Swan, narcissistic personality disorder, bipolar, what have you. We've seen it from the perspective of others, you know, viewing this, or us acting as kind of a third party, a fly on the wall. And sometimes we're in this experiences with them, but I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this, where we are experiencing this mental illness almost firsthand. We're getting a peek behind the curtain. You know, everything is through his lens, his experiences, his brain. And I think this movie has the potential to produce compassion in people. I think when people talk about things they experience, it's hard to wrap their heads around it because it's not your experience, especially when you have, I think, maybe a very typical living experience mentally, physically, what have you. It's hard to imagine anything atypical. A conversation that I see quite a bit happening on TikTok, because if you follow me, you know, I'm heavy on TikTok, is, you know, between the deaf and hearing communities. There really isn't a hearing community. I mean, I would never call myself a hearing person. That's not, you know, I don't think of myself that way as someone who can hear. Um, but for the deaf community, you know, that language makes sense. For me, it doesn't. I wouldn't never refer to myself that way. But as someone who can hear, I have a hard time wrapping my head around what it would be like to be deaf. Now, for someone who's deaf, who's never heard sound, I'm sure for them they can't imagine a world with sound, but a world without sound, complete silence for them is 100% normal. But for me, the thought of complete silence is terrifying. And I think that's why a lot of people have such what seemingly dumb questions for people who are deaf, because the concept of complete silence is it doesn't make sense, but it's also very terrifying. Complete silence for me would be just terrifying. But the movie that came out, what was it, last year? Coda. It didn't come out last year. It won the Oscar last year for Best Picture. There's a moment in that movie where the daughter, she's hearing, and her parents and her brother are deaf, and she's at a recital. She's singing a song. Her parents and her brother are in the audience, and we hear her sing, and then all of a sudden we hear nothing. It's complete silence, no static, nothing. And we're experiencing this concert through her parents' eyes, the way her parents and her brother would experience in complete silence. And they're having to look at, because there's no interpreter on stage to tell them what she's singing, what's happening. So they're looking at the people around the audience, getting visual cues to see how she's doing because they can't really tell for themselves. That moment was so powerful and so beautiful. For me, anyway, as someone who's been hearing my entire life, I can't fathom what it's like to have a world without sound. I'm grateful for those kinds of moments in cinema that allows me to step into someone else's shoes, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it feels weird. But it allows me to expand my brain and my knowledge a little bit, and also fills me with a sense of compassion that I wouldn't have had otherwise. I think this movie has the potential to do that for people who may not understand what it's like to live with some kind of paranoia disorder, schizophrenia, hallucinations, what have it, to not know what's real and what's not, to be constantly questioning your reality, and to even kind of live with that, and to know that you have to rely on medications and have to take them a certain way. Just, I can't imagine what that's like, but I think this movie kind of gives us a picture as to what it could be like. So it'd be interesting to hear from people who may deal with these kinds of issues, how this resonates with them and what they think and how it makes them feel. But for someone, you know, I have clinical depression. That's about it. But I don't have hallucinations. I'm never in a position where I question my reality. For me, this, you know, I felt a lot of compassion for him. I felt a lot of empathy, and my heart broke for him at moments because I kept wondering, like, how strange this must all feel. how hard this must be to never really know what's real and what's not, to be constantly confused, to have people around you who don't see what you're seeing, who don't understand what you're going through, who think you're crazy or weird or perverted, who resent you because you might be ill in some way. I don't I can't imagine what that has to be like, and I have to thank Mr. Ari Aster for giving us a peek into that window, and not just giving us a peek into that window, but inviting us into the house. I think out of all the things that this movie does, that's what it did for me. It will be interesting in a couple of months when I watch this again to learn what the director was actually trying to say. Want to advertise on this podcast? Check the episode description to see how you can be featured on the next episode. If you're still here, thank you so much for still being here. Thank you so much for listening to me neither rant nor rave, but ramble about Beau is Afraid. Again, that was directed by Ari Aster, starring Joaquin Phoenix. I don't know what I think. The best I can tell you is carve out 3 hours of your time and see it for yourself and let me know what you think. I think the consensus that I've gotten from people who have seen this is pretty much the same thing. Like, I still don't know how I feel about it. But I think Joaquin Phoenix gives an impressive performance. I thought this was an incredible feat. I hate that it's not getting as much love as it should. Critically, it's doing well, but box office wise, not so much. But then again, everybody and their mama is still competing with Super Mario Brothers. Y'all, can we talk about that for a hot second? Like, that movie is killing it right now at the box office. You know, movies are not supposed to kill like that until, you know, around this time, like May, late May, going into the summer. But, you know, a lot of the movies that were coming out right now, I don't think they were prepared for, I don't think Nintendo and all that jazz, I don't think they were really prepared for what this movie was, for what Super Mario Brothers was going to do. But congratulations to them. It's always amazing to see the box office do so well, given what COVID did to the film industry, almost did. So many theaters were fixing to shut down. So this is a kind of a random tangent. So I previously worked for a company in which that was software related. So a couple of our clients were actually some of these bigger movie theaters, Cinemark, Regal, AMC. And so we got a little bit of an inside peek into, you know, what was happening. And I know at one point, one of the companies actually had to lay off everyone except for top execs. So everyone except for the people who could keep the company itself alive and afloat and keep business moving until it was time to go back to the theaters. There were a couple of places that went through bankruptcy. Cinemark, I think, was actually one of my favorite people to work with. They were really, really sweet and really nice. And they're, you know, movie theater people. And I know they were struggling a bit for a while, if they're not still struggling. Regal was having some trouble. AMC has been trying to figure out ways to keep business going between, you know, allowing people to rent whole theaters. Now they have the AMC credit card out. So seeing a movie do incredibly well at the box office, to see people excited about going to the movies, taking their families to the movies, it makes me happy. I love the theater experience. I don't want it to go away. And yeah, that's just how I feel about it. So what's coming up? Love Again at the end of the week. So by the time y'all hear this, it'll be Friday. So you'll actually get the Love Again review right after that. And then I haven't the slightest idea what next week holds. None at all. I'm confused. I'm lost. So I'm playing it by ear at this point, just trying to figure out what to do next. But yeah, we shall see. So Love Again review will come right after this. If you haven't listened already, my Peter Pan and Wendy review would have been like seconds before this one. So yeah, that's where we're at right now. That's where my head is at, and I'm just hoping to figure out what to do for next week. I'm just waiting for more of a schedule to come out. There is a movie with Lily James that I really want to see, but I haven't seen any tickets for it just yet. But yeah, that's where we're at. That's how I'm feeling. I hope you got something out of this. I don't even know. Bless your heart, and thank you for sticking around. And I love you. Have an amazing weekend, and I will see you soon.